Hello, my friends. I wanted to put a face to this one as I feel it's important to kind of share who I am and what I represent as a coach. And I'm going to go through this. I wrote down a lot of my thoughts and it gave me time to reflect upon where I'm at here at the end of 2024 and how to move forward in 2025. And I always like to kind of reflect on my philosophy at the end of the year for coaching and make sure it's still in line, as I'll kind of talk about here. So, going to start with my philosophy as a coach, which I have on my website, and I'm going to include this video on my website so people get a better idea of who I am and what I do as a coach. So, my philosophy, as I believe that running is a journey that should be shared and enjoyed along each step of the way. By coaching, I create a partnership with each individual athlete in which we get to know the individual's needs and ways in which we can find the most success in helping the athlete achieve his or her goals through training. We cannot be successful without building trust in one another, and that begins with our daily honest communications as to how the athlete is performing in running and how daily life may be affecting their run for the day, week, or beyond. I believe in a comprehensive approach to training in which we have to consider the athlete's history with training, successes and failures, strengths and weaknesses in training, and how we can capitalize on the strengths and strengthen the weaknesses and keep a long term view for the athlete's longevity and health in the sport. My goal for each athlete is to keep them healthy and enjoying the sport en route to helping them build stamina and endurance while getting faster and stronger. I still believe that holds true to where I'm at as a coach, what I do. Again, that's on my website. If you want to read through that in this, in the description here, I'm going to put this whole thing. I'm going to share this document both in the description on YouTube. If you want to click over to there, and I'm going to release this as a podcast as well to put that out. I think this is a piece of my journey, right, as a coach, to continue to grow and evolve, become a better coach is my hope, right, in doing all of this. So it's helping hold me accountable, especially to my athletes, because that's what I do it for, is these athletes. And that's what I get into next is why coach? Why do I want to coach? Why do I want to be a coach? And here are my thoughts. Running has provided me so much. I've learned so much over the past 34 years. It's my turn to give back and share that knowledge. While running can be a selfish endeavor, I want to be a selfless, um, I want to be selfless and a part of other runners' journeys. I always hear that you should do what you love, and I love both running and coaching. It fulfills me and makes me feel alive. While with running comes success and failure, I will revel in the athlete's success, but I will also wallow in their failures. And that's a tough piece right there. If I go off script here and talk about that for a moment, is we want to celebrate the successes. And I think it's hard to find celebration in the failures, but it's in the effort of trying that we grow and we learn from the failures so that the next time perhaps we don't succumb to the same mistakes that happened there, so that we find the success rather than another failure. And that comes with coaching. We have to recognize the successes and the failures. We have to process those. And while my athletes are upset, I'm upset not only for them but with them. It does not make me feel good when I perhaps could have done something better. And that's kind of what I get into here. However, it is in those failures that I take the opportunity to assess and learn what I could have done better to help the athletes succeed in the future. Learning never stops. As our sport continues to change, I have chosen to continue to evolve as a coach, to learn how technology, physiology, and training methods are changing and enhancing our sport. My interests lie in helping My athletes achieve their fullest potential. No two athletes are the same. Thus, no two individuals should be trained in the same manner. While two people may train for the same event and eventually have similar results, the training to get them there will look similar and different at the same time. And that's a confusing statement. But as with most things in life, the secret lies in the details. While mileage, volume may look similar, it's how one completes the runs and what workouts the individuals do, how these workouts are analyzed, and where the individual goes from there. Do they continue to build? Do they need to recover? Do they need a new stimulus? These are questions I must communicate with the athlete, and therein lies the key: communication. So, my next piece here is obviously about communication, but going into a little bit more about, um, having two athletes training for the same event, but doing very different training schedules. We have to, again, if I go back to my philosophy, look at an athlete's strengths and weaknesses. What can the athlete do, and what do we need to improve on? One athlete may be, we'll call them an aerobic beast. They can go super long, they can do their long runs, but their turnover may not be fast enough to get them through the cutoffs of a race. So we have to improve upon their overall speed, their overall turnover, their average pace. Another athlete may be the complete opposite. They may be able to go fast, just not for a long period of time, and that's what we need to improve on, is their aerobic endurance. So again, looking at the individuals, we have to make sure that we're training them properly and in the manner in which they need the improvements to be successful at the event. I don't have cookie cutter plans. I don't sell those on my website. I don't really believe in those. I don't think any athlete should be trained in the same way as somebody else. There's very little change. It doesn't tell you if things are not working, what you should do. And I've talked about that in the past, and that's why I don't do those. I've been asked to create individual plans, like, maybe a 14 to 18 week training plan for somebody individually. I don't like doing those much because, again, like, I can't provide feedback or make changes if things aren't going right. So that's why I do the way I do things. And we're going to talk about that here, how I do things. So this next section is about my communication and what I believe communication should look like. My parents taught me from an early age that honesty is the best policy, and some have mistaken this for me being direct. While I may not sugarcoat my analysis or provide constant positive feedback, my words are valuable to my athletes. I have to recognize that, right? Like, if I'm just constantly providing positive feedback and saying, great job, I'm not necessarily giving the athletes what they need in order to improve, right? I have to let them know if things are not going right. And, sure, there's a way of expressing that. And sometimes, I may not say, like, well, this went right, but, we need to work on this. And that's just in presentation, something that I continue to work on myself. So, with that said, I have to be honest in what I see in order for the runner to reach their goals. If my feedback seems direct, it's because I mean to make a point and give the athlete an important takeaway to learn and develop their skills and understanding of training. While my communication is important, it's a two-way street, one in which the individual's feedback and comments are vital for the successful outcome in the goal. I need the runner to be completely honest in their comments, to tell me exactly how they feel and any reasons why they believe they had that outcome. I need the bigger picture. What is going on outside of the activity? How are their stress levels? How are they sleeping, eating, and hydrating? The more details they can provide, the easier it is to coach. I believe communication should be consistent and often. I check in on my athletes on a daily basis and make sure no changes are needed and provide feedback on their runs, which brings me to the topic of analysis. Okay? So in communication, like, that's the biggest thing I can harp on, is being able to provide that open, honest communication. And some are better than others. Some are very good at it. They write a lengthy comment post-run or pre-run, and it provides me with so much insight right? And then I can track it over time. What am I seeing? Am I seeing a trend? Am I seeing a downward trend? If so, what's causing that downward trend, right? If I feel like we've already cut back on volume, there's something else going on, right? And that's where we have to start to dig in because it's not always the training that's overstimulating. There could be something wrong within the system and within the body itself that we need medical attention, right? So that's something we have to be curious about is like, okay, well, we've, adjusted training to make sure that we're not overdoing it. And, by all means, it doesn't seem by metric standards that we're overdoing it, but there's something else, something underlying, right? So that's all provided in my communication, in looking at all aspects of life, right? Not only the metrics that are provided in the platform that I use, which we'll talk about later, but in their comments and using that as a whole, it's holistic, right? Using everything we have at our disposal to determine what's going on with the athlete, and that leads us into the analysis. Okay, so if I look at analysis, there's a lot here. Okay, so while technology continues to change our world, our ability to use it to better help the people who we work with has gotten exponentially better. When I first started coaching 24 years ago, it was very different to track an athlete's performance and metrics from their activity. Assessing a run was very subjective and based mostly, if not entirely, on the athlete's comments. As mentioned, communication is vital to a coach athlete relationship, so that feedback continues to be a huge part of analysis. What has come into play is the ability to view an athlete's metric or metrics for each activity and receive other feedback from the platform of the coach's choice. For example, I use an online tool called Training Peaks. Training Peaks has its own tools to help analyze a run and allows me to provide deeper feedback that will permit the athlete to train more in line with the programming. There are so many tools that coaches can use, and I believe not using them and providing honest analysis and feedback to the athlete is doing the individual a disservice. As when used properly, the analysis and feedback on both ends, both from the coach and from the athlete, will help with better programming and scheduling. There is a lot of technology out there. Some of it's good, some of it's good, and some of it's bad. Some of it's irrelevant. We've talked about that on the podcast, and not allowing some of these, frivolous comments that come from our devices to overrule common sense and being able to interpret data, the actual real data that is really important to help change and better our training. So, while technology is great and helps us, improve things, it can also be a drawback. And recognizing what is good for us and what is detrimental towards us. That's tough. And that's something that I talk about often with my athletes. I just had one of my athletes send me an Instagram reel that said, don't let some of these crazy technological comments and metrics throw you off. Don't put too much weight into them. And I think, if you're interested, there's some really good information out there, and that's tough too to know where to gain good insight and information. And I believe that Training Peaks does a great job of putting out articles. You can go to some great sources and resources to find articles on so many different topics to learn about what is good for us and what may be holding us back. Okay, so don't be afraid to use those resources. I talk about that in growth, and we'll talk about growth in a little bit. The next piece is about programming and scheduling, though. Not to be understated, programming and scheduling are two pieces of coaching that are obviously a major portion of what we do as coaches. I left it till now to show that coaching is not solely about writing a schedule and leaving an individual to their own devices. I won't say that's not coaching. I don't feel that's fair. That's what some coaches offer, and they're upfront and honest about what they're offering. Me, myself, that's not my style. What I will say is that I would not feel fulfilled as a coach if that's all I did. If all I did was write schedules, that I would not feel like I'm doing justice to the athlete. Again, that's my personal values, my personal opinion. I'm not judging any other coach that does it differently, especially if that's what they say they're offering. I want to harp on that. Okay. So I'm not trying to judge anyone. I'm just saying, as me, as a coach, I expect more of myself. And I express that to my athletes. So forgive me if it's cliche, but creating a schedule should be an art. I believe that when we as coaches create these schedules for these athletes, and we're going to talk about setting intention and purpose, but that's like a stroke of the brush to me, right? We're changing maybe the style of brush in different phases of training, but we're painting this picture. And that's, when we finish the picture, that's when the runner gets to race, right? We've had this journey of creating this picture. And, like I think about Bob Ross and Bob Ross's ability to painting after painting, and it's one of his series he followed this river and it went down the river, and if you look at painting after painting, it's his view of going down this river, and it's the same thing here, building a schedule, right? It's day after day, week after week, with the intention of giving the athlete success at whatever their goal is. Okay, so really important to me. Each day in the schedule should have an intention and purpose. There is no such thing as junk miles, not in my programming. I want to make sure that each run has a set intention and I communicate what that said intention is. What's the purpose of the run? Okay. I may not explicitly say we're working on this system, but I'm going to get into how I do make everyone understand what systems we're working. Each second, each minute, each hour provides the body with some sort of stimulus or adaptation that will help the athletes grow and improve. It is my job to explain that intention to the runners, and this is how I do it. I use pre and post activity comments to let them know, okay, here's our intention. Here's what the purpose is. Or, we missed the intention of this run, right? That's part of the feedback. That, you didn't do this and this is what we missed out on, in other words. So aside from those comments, we do phone calls. We talk about these things. Emails. I answer questions through their emails. We do Zoom calls, both individual and as a collective team. And I talk about the various principles of training and what these, hopefully these adaptations are going to gain. Like, what do we gain from these? What is the intention and what are we hoping to gain from it? So, with all that said, I'm a student and a teacher of this sport. While I continue to learn, I also continue to teach what I've learned. This comes through in my programming. I believe we cannot fully grasp concepts without either experiencing it for ourselves or teaching it to others. While trying things in my own running, I can provide details to my runners as to what they can expect both during and after an activity. I don't like to give my athletes tasks that I myself have not experienced. And while I cannot experience everything, I try to find others, coaches and or athletes that have. This allows me to discuss with them their experiences and gain knowledge from them. We call this growth. That's that's a huge piece of this. And growth is my next section here that I'm going to talk about. But learning, we continue to learn, right? We continue to grow in this sport. We continue to understand the human body better and how it responds to stimulus. So, with all of this knowledge, we want to continue to implement and use things that are going to effectively benefit the athlete. And There's big topics right now, and I'm sure within the next year there's going to be even more. But when we hear about these resources, it's in, in the best interest of the coach to find out more about it, right? That's how we're going to grow, is to learn and to continue to evolve as coaches. So in the growth portion, this this video, this podcast, it's a piece of my own personal growth, both as a person and professionally as a coach. At the end of each year, I have phone calls with my athletes, year end evaluations. I send them a year end evaluation form to fill out, and they return it to me, and that shapes and molds our discussion. I want to hear from them as to how they viewed their year and their experiences with me. How did I do? I always tell my athletes that I try to hold them accountable, but they need to hold me accountable as well. I want to make sure that I'm doing my part and meeting their expectations as a coach. It certainly can be hard to hear about my own weaknesses, my own flaws, my own failures. However, in facing them and in acknowledging them and working on improving, that's where I find growth. This year alone has changed my views on many training principles, perhaps more than any other year I've previously experienced. I can continue to read articles, listen to podcasts, attend seminars, read books, and gain continuing education certifications. I grow and implement these changes all while communicating these to my athletes and how I hope to benefit the runner. I like to revisit the aforementioned philosophy each year as well, as I kind of talked about. Before I started this recording, before I wrote this, I pulled up my philosophy on my website and I looked through it. And I read each sentence and reflected on the sentence. Does it still resonate with me? Is there anything that I need to change within it? This year, I didn't find that I needed to change anything. Now, next year, that may be different. But this year, I still felt that everything I said resonated. So, as in running, I strive for improvement in coaching. I measure those improvements by the successes and failures of my athletes. We have to have a way to measure ourselves. These year-end evaluations help me to measure how I'm doing. How are my athletes doing, right? Where did failures come from? How did successes go, right? What am I doing with maybe another individual that found success that I'm not doing with an individual that didn't have the success that they wanted? How can I implement and change that person's training to give them a better opportunity, a better chance of success? That's reflective. And I find in reflection, in assessment, in analysis, that's where I can find growth. That's where I can find how can I help the runners in the best possible way that I can and that I know how, or learn something different that may help them in their growth and mine at the same time. So what does my coaching look like? What does the future look like for me as a coach? I will continue to treat each runner as equally important in my eyes, to program each runner individually and with the same care and deliberate intention of seeing them improve. My job will be to recognize where they can make the most gains and growth from building on the past year, to recognize mistakes I made in training and making the corrections that will build them up in both fitness and confidence, recognizing that physical fitness is only a piece of the training process. Preparing an athlete mentally is just as important. We talk about the mental aspects of running and racing, but I need to be more consistent with this and check in with my athletes over the course of the training block. Nutrition and hydration is also evolving. While not my area of expertise, we, the runner and I, need to make sure we are trying to practice this area with new guidelines and intention of making sure we do what's best on race day. So I hope these are areas that I grow in the year ahead especially in the mental performance aspect. Now, I have some great people that I refer people to because they are professionals in this area. And I think that's important. Again, that I know my boundaries, that I don't step beyond where, my profession lies. My profession is in providing the athletes with programming, analysis, and feedback. I can help them grow in other areas and I can turn them to resources that can help them grow. And I can check in and see how this growth is doing. And that's what's important to me, is making sure that we continue to grow together, that we are improving not only physically, but mentally. We are getting stronger on both sides. So that's my biggest takeaway for 2025, or the thing I look forward to working on the most is making sure we're working both sides physically and mentally and engaging. We've done a good job in the past, but I know I can do better. So that's where I'm at for 2025. The other piece of it, nutrition and hydration. Again, we continue to learn that we can probably do more than what we've thought. And there's different ways of doing it. Does every athlete have to go to the maximum amount? No. But we need to figure out what's best. And we need to do that incrementally. And that's what I've just talked to my athletes about, is how are we going to incrementally implement nutrition and hydration and making sure we dial in what the correct amount is. So we're trying to take a look at the whole and make sure that we're training every aspect of it that we can. And we talked about, heat's also a piece of that. And that's tough when we go here into the winter months. We don't have that piece, that high temperature to see how is the gut going to respond. So we have to figure out ways that we can train and figure out how we can implement nutritional strategies and hydration strategies when the temperatures do get warmer again. And how do we deal with altitude if the race has high altitude, right? How do we continue to consume calories and carbohydrate? So things that we have to discuss and work around and learn together. In closing, I look forward to the year ahead, to take myself out of my comfort zone with what has worked in the past and put in the extra work to ramp up my coaching for the betterment of the runner's success. To be open to new ideas and recognizing that if they don't work, that's not necessarily a failure, but a way to grow and evolve. May you also continue to grow and find success in your own lives and in running. Coach Saft. I thank you guys for watching this, for being a part of this. If you are interested in coaching and want to hear more or talk to me, feel free to reach out in whatever way is easiest. You can reach out through my website, reach out through my YouTube channel, reach out through the podcast. There's multiple ways in the show notes to do so. I look forward to talking with you and seeing if we're the right fit for one another, and hopefully growing together and sharing in your journey. Thank you, my friends.